I am David Alzamendi, independent data architect and consultant, and today we're going to be looking at Microsoft Fabric Power BI Copilot. Yes, the Power BI Copilot functionality that we get as part of the Microsoft Fabric experience. All right, so let's get started. So remember that Microsoft Fabric essentially it offers different experiences. And as part of those experiences, Microsoft has released different Copilot experiences as well. So that means essentially that as part of the data integration or data science or Power BI, you can use Copilot experiences to help you do more work or to help you navigate the different components, the different functionality. And today we're going to be focusing on Power BI and how the Power BI Copilot experience can help you increase your productivity. So when we think of Microsoft Fabric Copilot, so you have to think of different personas as well. Remember that Microsoft Fabric enables different personas, different data practitioners to use different components within Microsoft Fabric. And I believe that that's one of the key highlights that you have to take into account within Microsoft Fabric, because there is not a single data practitioner who is able to do and cover all the different components and experiences. So remember, so we have different experiences, we have different Copilot functions, and each function is going to help a different persona achieve different objectives and execute different tasks. So when you look at Microsoft Power BI Copilot, there are two main personas. On one hand, we have the users, the report consumers, and on the other hand, we have the people creating the reports and doing most of the analysis. You can think report developers, data analysts, so BI developers, so many names for a skills, for a set of skills that is trying to get more insights from the information. But remember, two main personas, the users, who are the report consumers, and the report developers, the people creating the reports. And as you can see in this slide, each persona is going to be able to execute on different functionality within the Power BI Copilot experience. So the users, they're going to be able to summarize the information, ask questions using natural language, even like create some reports. But even if the users, the data champions, end up creating some reports, ideally you will want to get those reports peer-reviewed by the report developers, the center of excellence, the data analysts. So you can see that data analysts, they will take advantage of all the users' functionality, but also they will have some benefits to improve the semantic model. Remember, the semantic models are the key stone on offering Power BI reports within a company. So that means essentially that these two personas, they will take advantage of different functionality. And you might be wondering, why is this important? The reason why this is so important is because when you are rolling out Copilot for Power BI within your organization, you want to make sure that you establish the right change management program. On top of that, remember, so being able to have a business intelligence platform who caters for ad hoc queries, it's not something new. So for those ones who read or have access to the Data Warehouse Toolkit from 1998, you will see that it was highlighted then already that BI tools, they have to be able to offer ad hoc queries. And that's where the main business case is for most organizations nowadays. So I believe that any organization that has 50 plus users of Power BI, they should be able to take advantage of Power BI Copilot within the Fabric experience, or even to be able to put a business case to get the Fabric capacity that is needed, get the budget approved, so you can roll out Power BI Copilot. So let's get started. So if you were going to roll out or do a proof of concept or roll out Microsoft Fabric Power BI Copilot, so there are a few requirements that you have to take into account. So let's go and navigate to my desktop, and I'll show you a few items that you have to pre-configure to be able to have access to Copilot. The first one is that so you have to have a Microsoft Fabric capacity. So in the Azure portal, so you have to have a Fabric capacity that is either an F64 SKU or greater. So the trials, they will not work with the Copilot experience at the moment. So that means that when you're choosing your Fabric capacity, it has to be a Fabric capacity that is F64, equal to F64, or greater than that. So you can see it in the Azure portal. Let's go and share this screen. In the Azure portal, when you're setting up that Fabric capacity, it has to be F64 or greater than that. Then, as you know, you have to allocate this Fabric capacity to a workspace, or there is even a new functionality where you can allocate a specific capacity to be used as a Copilot capacity across multiple workspaces. But in a nutshell, yes, you need this Fabric capacity to be accessible to you. The second item that you have to go and configure is in the admin settings. So when you navigate to the admin settings in the admin portal, there are a few options in here that they have to be enabled. The first one, of course, you have to make sure that you enable Fabric across the board. So many of these functionality has to be enabled. The users, they have to be able to create Fabric items. And the other ones, you can find them by searching for Copilot within the settings. A few options in here. So let's go and check out them. The first one, basically, it enables users to use Microsoft Fabric Copilot. And currently, you cannot enable only Copilot for Power BI. So that means that when you're enabling Copilot, you're enabling Copilot for all the different experiences. So that means that you will get Copilot for Data Factory, you will get Copilot for data engineering. So right now, is you enable all, or you don't enable any of them. So big consideration. The second item is that what happens right now is that there are only a few regions where the information is going to be processed in regards to the prompts and the natural language and the generative AI model. So currently only a few regions in the US, I think there's definitely one in Europe, but this means essentially, and we're going to review this towards the end of the session, that when you are including a prompt and asking a question to your model, so that prompt is going to travel overseas. It's a big consideration if you have really strict regulations. It doesn't mean that the data is going to go overseas, while it could happen if it's as part of the grounding of the model, but essentially this could be a showstopper for some industries that are highly regulated. And the other two essentially are, the last one is quite similar to the second one. So the last one means that not only to be processed, but also stored. And the third configuration that you might want to enable, and this is it's not mandatory, but this is basically, you can select one of your Fabric capacities to be the one that is going to be used for all the Fabric Copilot workloads. So once that you have enabled, the mandatory one will be definitely the first one, and the second one, you'll be able to take advantage of Microsoft Fabric Copilot for Power BI. So On top of that, let me go back to this slide. So remember that there are a lot of resources available to you within Microsoft Fabric. I think it's good to have a read of the documentation and some of the fine print of using Fabric Copilot. But let's try to get ahead of our game and start doing some demos. So let's imagine for a second that we are one of those report consumers. So we're going to review essentially those 5 different characteristics, and let's go and get it done. So going back to my desktop experience, you will see that I have a Power BI report open, and as a report user, so right now we're using essentially our data analyst report developer experience. So the idea is that we want to get some information with the help of Copilot. So you can see here at the top right corner, we have the Copilot option icon. So we're going to click on it, and there are a lot of things that we can do. The first one is that it gives you some hints on how you can use it. I think this is great. You can start asking about information about the information in this specific page. And this is going to look at the semantic model, it's going to look at the metadata, the column names, the synonyms, the descriptions, and some of the data. And you can see that it gives us a really nice summary of this specific report page. You can also ask for, I know many of us or many of you have to present to executives your findings. So in that case, let's collapse this so we have some more space. We can ask for an executive summary. So it's really nice. You can see how we can easily get a summary that we can attach to a presentation, or you can do this on the fly. So if you don't have time to look at all the information in the report, you can take advantage of Power BI Copilot to get some of those insights. But that's not all. Actually, as a report consumer as well, you can be more specific. So we can ask specific questions about our data. As an example, what is the total number of enrollments for a specific school? And we get the answer, and we also get a nice pointer where the information is coming from. And when we look at the School of Business, so if we select the School of Business here, and we look at 2023, you will see the number is correct. Now, you can also ask for specific questions about a fact, something that happened in the past. So we can ask, what happened with the grade average in 2022? And we get some information. Before I want to give you one more example, and then here you can see an explanation on what happened to the grade average. So there was a drop in comparison to previous years and so on, and you can see this drop in here in 2022 when we look at the grade information from the past. You can also ask the information to be displayed into a visual. So in this case, we're going to be really specific, and we want the enrollments by schools in a column bar chart. So let's wait for this answer to come back, and you can see that now we have a really nice column bar chart that shows the information. And you can also explore this visual and also change some of the columns using built-in functionality of Power BI. Now, what you have to remember is that one of the key benefits of the main way that you're going to take advantage of this Copilot experience is by having a really good semantic model. So this is where all the best practices that we were talking about for the past few years, they come into into value realization. So the reason why you can ask questions and make sure that the answer is correct, it comes down to your semantic model. So your semantic model has to follow best practices. It has to follow ideally a star schema data modeling approach. If the information is duplicated across different tables, you can imagine, so the model is going to struggle to select maybe the right field. So make sure that you've done a really good semantic model, you have applied best practices, and you have all the validation before you start using Copilot with that semantic model. I know that might sound like a lot of work, but that's the reality. So we're trying to expose our semantic model through natural language. That's a big change in comparison to just making a report accessible. Now we're making the data, the metadata accessible to our users. So remember that good and best practices, they have to be applied to the semantic model. So let's continue looking at the different functionality. Still, we're in the user's point of view. So there you have a few examples on how you can query the data. But on top of that, imagine that you want to create a small report. So you're a data champion, still from a user point of view, from a consumer point of view. Sometimes, they want to create a small visual or come up with some information. So, and you can do that essentially by looking at the semantic model, one of your semantic models that you have. You can go and create a new report. Of course, you can do this from Power BI Desktop, but for today's demo, we're using the Power BI portal. So again, you can see that we have our Copilot experience at the top. You can click on it. We're going to collapse some of this information, and we can essentially get Copilot to give us some suggestions to create a new report page. And we get a few options, and we say, okay, student performance, enrollment trends. So let's go with the enrollment trends. So you can see that now it's coming up with some information. Now, well, we might agree, disagree, how good the report is, but we're talking about the functionality and having the option to create reports through natural language. And you can also change this report layout. So essentially, we are going to ask for the page to have a couple of filters. As well, we can ask for specific visuals. And we can also get Copilot to create multiple pages within the same report. So we can go back to our initial information. We can get a different report page for student performance if we have to. So right now you can see the model, the prompt is traveling to the model. So the model is trying to come back with the right approach. We're going to give it some time. And if it takes too long, sometimes it takes too long, you might want to stop it and try again. Now with a little bit of patience, now we got our school name filter. We didn't get our year filter, and we asked for a year filter. So let's try to break it. Add a year filter as well. And hasn't added, the year filter has already been added to the report page, and there it is. I don't see it over here, but you can see. So it takes sometimes a couple of iterations to get where you're trying to get, but let's try creating just a simple visual like the one that we had before, but now we want to get that visual within the report page. Remember, we are wearing here the report user experience. And now we get a nice stack column bar chart here at the top. And you can keep asking, for new pages. So let's say that we want to create a new page. So we get one about the student performance. And now this is going to add a new page to the Power BI report. So why do you think this is so good? Now, remember, we're wearing here our report consumer hat. So a data user, we're just, we don't know anything about Power BI, but now we're able to draft a Power BI report, and create some of the visuals that might be meaningful for me as a professional to get more insights of my organization. Remember, we're still wearing the user's hat. What will happen? You might look at this report now, and once that we're happy with this report as a user, now maybe it's the moment to send this report to the Center of Excellence or to the Power BI experts, the data analysts, so they can apply the corporate theme and make sure that the report follows best practices and standards that match Microsoft recommendation as well. I think this is a great way of enabling some data champions, some users within the organizations to create reports based on existing data in a semantic model. That doesn't take away that you have to send that report to a Power BI expert, so the best practices, they can be applied and it can be rolled out and maintained by IT. Great starting point. And there you have a few options that you can use as a user. So if you are creating a new report, remember you can ask as well add the smart narrative. So many of you have to somehow include information, descriptive information about the information that you're displaying. So we're going to close this, and you can use also Copilot for the smart narrative in here. And you can add the executive summary here, and you can also select from which visuals and which pages to get the information from. In this case, we're going to leave this page because we're in there, and we're going to leave it as it is, but you can provide feedback as an example. So give me the summary of the data in a paragraph without bullet points, and it will update the executive summary as required. So let's hit refresh. So this is another way that you can use Copilot as a user. So you can use the smart narrative visual, and there is one more visual that you can use, might be a little bit more advanced, but that visual will be, let's close this, and we're going to bring the other visual, that is the Q&A visual. So now the Q&A visual is good, but it's not great. But now from Power BI Desktop, we might need to do this from Power BI Desktop as a data analyst. I will show you that. But here it is. So there you have it. This is the experience as a Power BI user and consumer. This is how you can use Power BI Copilot as a report consumer. And now we're going to take that hat off, and we're going to start wearing the hat of a report developer, a data analyst. So let's go and look at the experience of Copilot from a report developer, data analyst point of view. Now, let me go back to our desktop experience. And now there are many of the things that you can do from Power BI service, but I know if you are a Power BI developer, it's likely that you're using Power BI Desktop, and it's not going to be any different for this demo. So as a Power BI developer, there are a few things that you can use from Copilot. One of them is to be able to navigate the semantic model. So let's go on. We'll look at pricing later, sorry. Okay, so from a semantic model point of view, yeah, you want to make sure that you follow best practices, dimensions, fact tables. You can have a snowflake approach as well. But you can see here, if I selected any of these, any of the columns in here, and I will not see it, the Copilot, so I might skip here. So the Copilot allows you, I haven't prepared the demo, but it allows you as well to define synonyms and descriptions for your fields. So this is one point that you as a report developer, you can take advantage of that functionality. And the next one, so you can still see the Copilot here at the top. So that means that you can still do all the things that we've done in the service. You know, you can create report pages and so on. But one of the cool features, if you're not a DAX expert, you can get Copilot. So let's remove this. You can get Copilot to help you create some measures. So now it's looking at the semantic model, it's looking at the data, and you can see that is essentially creating a measure for us. So you can ask for specific measures that you're trying to create, but once that Copilot gives you this measure, you can keep it and persist it in the semantic model. Let's say that we don't want this measure, but we want a measure, create a measure for the total number of enrollments. We'll give it a few seconds. And now create a measure of the total number of enrollments. We can look at the measure to see if it makes sense. This is really important. This measure doesn't make sense. And the reason why it doesn't make sense is maybe because the metadata of my model is not good enough, right? But the reality is that you can also ask for time dimension DAX measures, more complex measures. So here you have, without having to go to a different tool like ChatGPT or any other generative AI model, this is built in within Power BI Desktop. You can use Power BI Copilot to help you create measures. As well, it will help you explain specific DAX topics, explain the measures. So there's a lot of functionality here that might be useful for Power BI developers who are just starting with DAX as such. So here you can see that it's explaining the different measure and the different functionality, and then you can select to keep that specific measure. So you can see that this is going to create specific measure. Now we can update the semantic model. I'm going to copy this name. It's going to create those measures for us. And it's going to persist those two measures in the semantic model, as you can see. So this, if I click now on the measure previously created, so let's go. You can also run it to test the data. There seems to be a syntax error. So let's go in here and see what happened with this measure. Yeah. A lot that can be done with the Copilot experience in Power BI. Now, the reason why I believe that some of the experiences that we saw before, like the one for creating Power BI report pages and trying to create some visuals with Power BI, I don't believe those are real use cases for a Power BI developer, because you as a Power BI developer, you are already following a standard approach for creating Power BI reports within the organization. But there you have two different personas. We look at the Power BI users, the consumers, and we also look at the developers. We haven't had the opportunity to look, how to create the synonyms and descriptions, but the functionality is there for you to take advantage of with Power BI Copilot. And now we're going to talk about pricing. I know that pricing is something that has to be considered as part of any organization. Yeah, remember, this runs as part of the Power BI F64 capacity. So let's have a quick look at pricing. So the way that pricing works is essentially, once that you get the F64 capacity, and that right now is this negotiable. So you have to get the F64 capacity. So once that you get that, depending on the prompts that you send to the generative AI model and the output, the results of the prompts, that's how you're going to use your capacity. So let me try to put it in different words. So remember, as part of getting a Fabric capacity, you are given a specific number of capacity units. And the way that you're going to use those capacity units in Microsoft Fabric for Copilot is through tokens, essentially. So when you're looking at the input tokens and the output completion tokens, you can see here that the input tokens will consume less capacity units per second than the output tokens. So let me give you a quick example. So imagine for a second that you're asking for a DAX measure that returns the sum of the amount in the sales tables. So that's your input token. That's the input prompt. That's your prompt. And when you break it down, that's 16 tokens. And then the output could be the output that we get from the model is essentially to create a DAX measure that returns the sum, and you can see that it gives us all that information, not only the measure, but also the description of the measure, and that's 45 tokens. And now, based on the information that we had before, that the prompt is going to be 400 capacity units a second, and the results is going to be 3 times that, 1200 capacity units a second, then you can come up with the calculation, so you can show how much that prompt is going to cost the organization. I haven't seen anybody going to this level of detail to be able to budget for the use of Fabric Copilot within an F64 capacity, but you have to understand that there is a scientific way that you can use to measure how much capacity units you are going to be using with Copilot. So a good example would be, okay, we're going to enable Copilot to 400 users within the organization. And once that you've done that for 1 month, you're going to get really good insights on how the users are taking advantage of Microsoft Fabric Copilot. Because this is part of the Microsoft Fabric metrics app. So you'll be able to monitor this as well. The last chapter for today that we have to really take into account as well is definitely considerations and limitations. So let's go back to our example, because we really want to show you as well what are some of those considerations that you have to take into account when rolling out Microsoft Fabric Copilot in the organization. So sharing the specific chapter. Okay. So the first item that I wanted to review with you is the one that you see here. So what data is being processed overseas? So remember, so right now the Copilot information is going to be processed only in a couple of regions in the US. There's another region in Europe, and eventually there'll be more regions. And Copilot will be available across all the Azure regions available. But right now, what happens is that the data that might go, that the data that is going to be processed in one of those specific regions is essentially, you can see the prompt and some additional data that is retrieved through the grounding process. What the grounding process? So essentially, any information that is being added to the prompt to give it context. You can think of column names, table names, descriptions, synonyms, any computed column definition. So all that data is essentially part of the prompt as well. So you've seen in our previous example, so what this means is that you're not only sending the prompt that says create a measure for sales amount. So there is a lot of context that is going to be added to that prompt behind the scenes. That's something to consider. So when you are planning, trying to come up with how many tokens you will use for a prompt, it's not only that prompt, is the chat history, it is any grounding, any data that has to be added to a grounding process, like metadata. And that might travel overseas. So this is a big consideration. And then in regards to the limitations, as you know, there are quite a few. These limitations, they will disappear as the product team releases more functionality within the Copilot experiences. But something that you have to have a read before you roll out this within your organization. So all this, the consideration, limitations, and how the data is processed for the Copilot experience, it is available in Microsoft Learn. So you can have a look at that information in there. But let's just start wrapping up. Okay. So today you saw how you can use Microsoft Fabric Power BI Copilot to enable your users to basically get more insights through natural language. I think that the biggest business case for most organizations right now is to enable Copilot for some of those users. Of course, you have to do the groundwork. Make sure that you create a really good semantic model. You make sure that you enable Copilot only to a subset of users initially. And the reason why this is so cool is because this is going to drive more adoption of your data analytics platform. The more users they take advantage of the data analytics platform that you have built, the bigger the return of investment is going to be for the organization. The more data literacy you're going to have within your company. So this is going to help you get a better return of investment from your data analytics platform. It's going to help you increase data literacy. And look, it's going to help get users more engaged without having to know everything about Power BI, just asking a question using natural language and getting some results, a response, so they can make informed decisions. So this was everything for today. If you have any questions, remember, connect with in the social media networks with me, but more important, subscribe to this channel to support me in the upcoming streams. So stay tuned.